He's coached women's track, and this career has been tarnished by false allegations. And it's about money. There's $13.5 million lawsuit from these same false allegations. With that, again, we want to thank all the people that have continued to support him despite these allegations, and that's hundreds of people who have reached out to him personally, former teachers, former students, parents who have supported him, who knew these allegations to be false. And again, I thank the district attorney's office for having the courage, right? They had victims and had allegations to look at the evidence and make an evidence-based decision. And this should have never been filed. There were false allegations, but they did their job, and they followed the evidence and they dismissed it. And with that, again, you have my statement that Phil Coons wrote. Phil is a very private man. He is a Christian. He's a Catholic. He loves his family. He loves God. And he loves football. So he's tried to live that way. With that, I'll answer questions.
How's he feeling now?
He's relieved, as anyone would be. Him and his family have been through a terrible ordeal. As you know, Phil has 6 adult children. Many of them are involved in education. He has countless grandkids. And their entire family has been put through the ringer. From being bullied online, where people are calling them pedophiles, and that they're protecting pedophiles, that they're covering things up. Those are hard things to listen to when it's your father, when it's your mentor, and when you know it's not true. So he's relieved. Again, this was not the way he envisioned his career ending. He's one of the all-time greatest winning coaches in history. But more importantly, he has donated his life to kids, and that was taken away from him a little bit prematurely.
What are his next steps now?
So, I can't speak for him. We are our close personal family friends. I can tell you that right now, they're almost in shock that this is over. And again, it's been a long time. And so there's still a civil case pending. And so I'm not sure what his next steps will be. And that's not the unfortunate part of this whole ordeal, is just the allegations, right, can end your career. Even though they're not true, we're dealing with one count of outraging public decency. Not this wild, crazy sexual escapades that was made that splashed that the civil attorney splashed the news with, calling him a pedophile. Those things didn't happen, right? That didn't happen. Trying to make a buck, right? So instead, his career's been tarnished. I don't know if somebody would hire him just because of the allegations, and that's a tragedy. When someone who has never even been written up, who's again given his entire life, getting up at 5:30 in the morning, opening the gym, lifting, running 7 days a week with football. And then track and different sports, and you don't have to do those things. He chose to do those things. He chose not to go to the next level in college because he wanted to stay where he was, because he enjoyed it. And I know that coaching's in his blood. It's all he's ever done, and I'm certainly certain that he would love to do that again. But it's a tough situation, because you're asking a superintendent or a school board maybe to risk their careers just because of false allegations.
Has the school been in contact with him at all afterwards or during this?
Certainly, and I don't speak for the school, I'm not their attorney, but I can tell you that as a board and as a superintendent, that they have backed Mr. Coons. They did an investigation, and they didn't find any wrongdoing. But those are questions you'd probably have to ask the school or their attorney. I can tell you that they are strong supporters of his, and that's why they voted to implement him back on 5-0. And again, even after the OSBI report came out, it came out in mid-May. We had discussions with law enforcement at that time, and we put the school put him back to work. He went back to work in June, and the charges weren't filed until October. He was the head principal, 7th through 12th, and coaching and teaching at that time. So there was no threat to students, or he would have never been allowed to go back and start that 2024 season. And so, I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
I was going to ask why he's not here to speak in person.
So, I don't know if anyone's ever called you a pedophile, but it's very difficult to not be emotional or angry or upset. I'm emotional, and I'm upset, and I'm angry about it, and it's just my friend, right? So, there's still, like I mentioned, a $13.5 million lawsuit. Phil has to be deposed in that federal case. And so under the advice of counsel, and guys far smarter than me, he he's not really allowed to talk. It's a huge risk for him, both personally and for the district. And so I've been authorized to answer as many questions as I can, as honestly as I can, and I'm trying to do that for you. But that's why it would be very difficult for him to stand up here and not express his joy at being vindicated, right? And also his outrage at not being able to continue to do the things he loved to do, which is helping people.
Court records show that the Ringling School District was aware of previous allegations out of Clinton and Tuttle. I know you don't have anything to do with that, so you would say that these here, because he did end up resigning after those allegations in Tuttle, you would say these are 100% false, that those people brought to light.
So again, I personally taught with Phil Coons in the 05-06 season at Tuttle. I was a football assistant on his staff as well as a wrestling coach in that community and taught. I can tell you that he was never written up. He's never been filed on. And so I don't know of a teacher or coach that I've ever had, as far as football goes, that hasn't let a curse word fly every now and then. But there's certainly a huge difference between cursing a child out, cursing a kid out, and using a curse word to a general group. And so you can't go to a T-ball game, and my children are 6 and 3, and not hear cursing in the stands, not hear cursing standing in line to get in. You can't watch network TV and not hear a curse word. And so is it right or wrong? Well, that's not for me to decide, right? I'm not God, clearly, and I'm not the moral judge of all of us. But if that's all that you can accuse someone after 38 years, that's a pretty stellar career.
And does Mr. Koons have any idea of, I guess, why this is happening and happened Clinton Tuttle here? Does he think there's some form of retaliation or?
Well, to be frank to that, it didn't happen in Clinton. It didn't happen in Tuttle. This is the first time he's ever been had a lawsuit, the first time he's ever been suspended, ever. And the suspension with pay only came after Governor Walters initiated the OSBI investigation, which again, these charges did not come from the Attorney General's office. The OSBI did not act on it. It came from a local district, and they had victims. They listened to their victims, they investigated it, and then they made the right decision based on facts and evidence to dismiss it. And that's what we want to hammer home here, is that Phil, again, has given his whole life to doing these things. Ringling wouldn't have hired him if they thought any of those things were true. I can't speak for them, but I'm certain that they would have vetted and called his former school districts and called those people to see. Again, there's never been anything in his teaching and coaching profile. But here, the issue is a student got suspended for threatening with a gun on Instagram, which would get him kicked out of any school district in Oklahoma City or Edmond that I'm aware of. He got suspended for those actions, and then his family turned around and tried to burn a man's reputation down and a school. And I guess over money, $13.5 million seems like a pretty good reason, I guess, to be deceptive. And so I don't understand why anyone would do that. That's a question you probably have to ask them. But I can tell you from the evidence that I've seen personally, I am privy to the OSBI reports. I've had them transcribed. I've watched them. That's part of the evidence. I'm also privy to the depositions, that their statements were inconsistent, and that's putting it as politely as I possibly can. Inconsistent at best. And out of the 50 to 70 kids interviewed, there was one group of family, one group, that statements all matched, almost like it was written by a civil attorney instead of their own words. Their statements matched when everybody else's didn't. And so for every allegation that they made in Ringling, you had eyewitnesses, and 20 to 30 of them, they'll tell you it didn't happen like that. It's not true. Down to allegations, I think, that the civil attorneys have made of the monkey play. Well, it's called the money play. And the young man is African American. He played for Phil. We've deposed him. And he said it absolutely didn't happen. Phil has done nothing but help me be a better man. And so those things are awful to have to answer and defend. And that's, while I'm certainly very, very glad we didn't have to go to trial to defend his honor, but that's all kind of the worst part about it now, right? We didn't even get to have our moment in court to defend ourselves.
Is the families that you said had the same statements, that group of like 7, that number? I was seeing number 7 a lot.
Correct, and I would really kind of narrow it down to 6. It's been, inconsistent statements are a problem when you're talking about truth, right? So, because truth and facts don't change, right? They don't change. If something happened, it happened. Certainly people's perception of those things can be different. Here you have a situation where if that truly happened, it's not Kingfisher, right? This is not that situation. There's no video, there's no audio. I can't imagine a situation today where somebody doesn't have their phone out. If Phil Coons is cursing someone out in that locker room, or on the sideline, or at practice, right? One of those kids is going to get his phone out. I don't think it would stay undercover. So you have to look at the timeline and use common sense and logic. Not a single allegation came out at him until this kid was suspended. And then all of a sudden now he's a problem. And so I think that that is deceitful. I think it's a tragedy, and it's unfortunate because you're talking about someone, again, who has, it doesn't even spank his children, right? He's a devout Catholic. He's countless students and former students and athletes. My witness list was the longest one I've ever had on death penalty cases, and it's 125, and I could have put another 200 people on there who wanted to come testify for him. But we're talking about a misdemeanor, right? And these people, I don't know their motivations. I don't understand it, but I can tell you that the facts and the evidence certainly make it look like they're out to ruin someone's reputation and attack them because they were upset that they didn't get what they wanted on the football field or in the classroom from that Ringling administration. They didn't get their son unsuspended so he could play his senior year. So they wanted to ruin everybody else's. And that's exactly what they've done.
Has Mr. Coons ever expressed regret for something he said to a student or the way he treated a student?
No, but I can tell you as a former administrator myself, I taught 9 years, that certainly you have moments that you regret. And I think that's everybody in every job, in every situation, that there's times we can go back and do something different, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or you're giving an interview right now. There's certainly things I'm going to look at later and wish I would have said differently, right?
And then you had mentioned that you all are kind of family friends. Have you ever heard him use a racial slur?
I have not. And in fact, Phil, much like my background, did not grow up in a household of privilege. Phil grew up on Capitol Hill on the south side and was kind of in a rough environment growing up. And then he played college ball. And certainly he played with a very diverse group, and some of his best friends were there. And so even in this case, to bring it back here, you make allegations of racism. The African-American is head of the Referees Association, did all of his games. And he's also in law enforcement. And we deposed him. And he said that Phil didn't for a minute say any of those things. And that if he had, he would have lit him up like a Christmas tree. But those things didn't happen. And so those are some of the evidence and things we were going to put on at trial. And that's some of the things that the DA's office looked at to help make their decision to dismiss this based on facts, is that it just didn't happen, right? If it had happened, he would have gotten in trouble for it, right? And we also talked to members of his chain gang. They're right there on the sideline next to him. They're there before the game. They're there at halftime. And they've never heard a single one of those things. And again, I think that's telling that there is a lack of evidence, a complete lack of evidence for the allegations.
How do you expect this dismissal to affect the civil suit?
Well, again, I do some civil work, but I'm not that fancy. I'm not that smart. I can't tell you. I certainly hope that in the interest of justice, that it cuts a big hole in it, right? I don't think there are bad people in the world. I'm a defense attorney, and I'm not going to tell you that everybody I represent is always innocent, right? But there are times when there are false allegations, okay? And this is one of those times. And so I don't know if you know the saying, follow the money, but this certainly seems like a very retaliatory, vindictive action to destroy a man's current reputation over money. And it looks like the civil attorneys were heavily involved in that, to the point where they went online themselves personally and called him a pedophile on Facebook, and called people that supported him and tried to argue against someone supporters of a pedophile. And I think that is, I know attorneys sometimes get a bad rap for being ambulance chasers, but I think that's worse. That's bottom feeding, that's unethical, and they should be ashamed of themselves for doing that.
Does Mr. Coons or you on his behalf have any message for those students or the victims that came forward?
Phil has never tried to do anything but hold students accountable. It has always been his policy and everything that he has done to hold students and players, and he's coached his entire career, he's coached women's track too. You don't have any allegations there. But he's tried to hold people accountable and want them to be better people. If you're a better person, if you're a better student, if you're a better player, right, those things transfer over. And so he's most proud of former fools like me who want to be a lawyer or be a doctor or who are coaching and having success. certainly this has hurt his family and hurt his feelings, right? He's human. But he wants them to go on and be successful in life. He wants them to move past this also, for better or worse. They're not kids anymore. Most of them are over the age of 18. But what do you say about people who made these allegations against you that aren't true over money? So there's not a whole lot for him to say, other than he prays every day and he works on those things, and he believes that we're here through his faith and for the people that prayed for him. And he said he's praying for them. That's about it. And it'd be very difficult for him to say anything else.
I don't know if this might be a silly question, but like, what exactly is the civil lawsuit like about?
The civil lawsuit is directly about the same things that we were accused of in the criminal case. So the civil lawsuit is making allegations against Coach Koons of wrongdoing. And so I don't want to go into that. I'm not the civil attorney. I'm not on that case. But it is hand in hand. The same allegations that were made for the criminal side are the same allegations made in the civil case.
You just made mention of the civil case. Reference to the depositions that you detailed. Who provided those to the DA for the dismissal?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So I worked hand in hand with the civil attorneys. They were a great help. They had resources and access to stuff that we don't have. So the hardest part here is, again, I've been involved in this case, a good 10 months before it's even filed, right? But Phil's not made of money. He's a teacher and a coach, right? So the amount of time and hours spent in this, guys, I've done a death penalty case, and the files we have on this case are ridiculous. You have that OSBI interview. They interviewed almost 70 students. They went back his entire career, 38 years. That's a huge amount of information, not to mention when we started getting into the depositions. And so the stack of files we have on this just for discovery is unbelievable. And so certainly Phil pays his bills. Don't mistake anything I'm saying. He's a big guy. I don't want him to get ornery with me. But Coach, I did not charge him what I would charge for this because he couldn't afford it. This was always about justice and trying to help someone I respect and a friend, and that's what we had as a result. As far as the civil side goes, with those guys having access to those resources, it gave us an opportunity, right, to get a bite at the apple we might not have until trial. If a felony case comes along, you have an opportunity to do a preliminary hearing and kind of get a bite at the apple. You get to see your witnesses a little bit, right? Here, we wouldn't have had that opportunity until trial. With the depositions, it changed all of that. It gave us a chance to sit down in front of them and ask them questions. Maybe not the same questions I would ask in cross-examination. The civil guys are looking at it a little bit differently than me. Those attorneys are smart. But certainly, they got to deep dive into these allegations, into times, dates, who was there, what exactly happened. And with that evidence and armed with that, it became very, very clear that there were so many inconsistencies that they dismissed in the interest of justice and did the right thing.
Do you think that Koons will ever coach again?
You know, I can certainly tell you that that's all he's ever done. He's coached Pee Wee. The entire time he's been high school coaches, he's coached little kids basketball, not only with his own kids in it, but just anytime he's had extra time. I don't know. All right, this hurt him, and it hurt him deeply, and it hurt his family. All right, more importantly, and so he doesn't want to do anything that's going to hurt his wife or his kids or his family. But coaching's in his blood. It's what he loves to do. He loves to help young people out. So I'm sure if the right situation comes along, he will do it because he didn't do anything wrong. Any other questions this time? Thank you guys so much for coming. We appreciate you.